r/AskMen. Amazed Respect says, what do you think is causing marriage rates to decline so rapidly? Is the loss of traditional values causing marriage rates to decline? I'm happily married, but have friends who aren't. They feel like a major reason why dating and marriage rates are dropping is because we are losing traditional values, and they say it's making the dating scene especially tough for men. Summing up their argument, back in the day, commitment, family, and long-term relationships were highly valued, creating a more stable and predictable dating environment. Nowadays, with the decline of these values, the dating pool has become more chaotic and superficial. There's a cultural push for instant gratification and personal freedom over commitment, making it harder for men to find serious long-term partners. Social media and dating apps have only made things worse, turning dating into a game of swipes and likes rather than meaningful connections. They showed me a YouTube video where a guy is dating AI girls on sites like Character AI and Lover AI. That's crazy. The focus on individualism and the constant search for the next best thing has created a dating culture that's increasingly difficult for men who are looking for real, lasting relationships. Do you agree with them, or do you think there's another reason at fault? Or, do you think they're crazy? Important Cow 7230 says, in English-speaking Western countries, the gap between what men and women want and expect from each other is the widest it's ever been. It's not just marriage going down, it's the amount of relationships, the amount of sex. Everything. Material Carrot says, not just English speaking. South Korea might be the worst of the lot in this regard. Savage Saint 00 says, South Korea looks so pleasant from the outside, but learning that they have the highest suicide rate in the world was jaw-dropping. I used to dream of moving there. Niconian says, I agree with cost of living being a reason, but the loneliness epidemic may also be contributing to it too. Financially, they have to earn enough to support their lifestyle, but they also have to 1. Be able to socialize and 2. Have enough free time and a good place to meet people. If I wanted to avoid talking to someone, it's easier than ever, and if I wanted to meet someone at a third place, it's harder than ever. I think the personal values that someone holds can definitely affect whether or not that person marries, but I believe macro influences have a bigger impact on population-wide effects like lowering marriage rates. Exxon Warrior says, and if I wanted to meet someone at a third place, it's harder than ever. The decline of third places is definitely one of the biggest issues. I no longer consider myself Christian, but I still kinda miss church as the third place. Everyone knows each other, plenty of kids to play with. Outside of Sunday services there were plenty of other weekly, more social events as well. Flying Sagittarius says, I actually did this for quite a while, even though I'm not even Christian. Everyone was friendly and inviting, and I got to meet quite a few people that I never would have met any other way. Dry Common 828 says, as a married Jenks man, I would suggest there are many reasons for this. But briefly, one that I'm confident is a big driver in Australia, where I am, is that until the 80s and 90s, women were broadly dependent on their husband's ability to earn an income. A single woman didn't have much of a future in this country. There have always been outliers of course, but this is broadly true. The women of my generation have built on the work of the feminists of the 70s and 80s, and since that time more and more women have had the choice of career or children, and for a minority of women, the opportunity to have both. This has meant that women no longer find themselves in a position where they have to marry to have a decent life. Instead they marry if it's something they want to do. And more power to them, I say. Since this is AskMen, I'll add that men being more able to make the choice to marry or not is also a good thing. There are many men who are happier being unmarried too. Penless says, bingo. All of the other factors mentioned here play a role, sure. But now, women don't have to stay with men just to survive. The loss of traditional values argument vastly ignores that women as a whole had no other real viable options to survive other than marry and have and raise children. Now, women don't have to put up with terrible and abusive behaviors from their husbands because they can support themselves and have the opportunity to spend time finding better partners. Conversely, men have also found happiness and fulfillment not being married and/or finding women that more align with their lifestyles rather than just the one wife at home role. And overall, there are still people who want that kind of old school relationship. But most of the time, I've heard it from guys that want a wife at home to do the wifely duties, but have no means at all to actually provide for the lifestyle. Perspective is a powerful tool. Ryadansa says, I just got married this weekend. I'm a 33-year-old woman who dated a fair amount of men that ended up not being the best choice for either of us. I have had a good paying job for my entire adult life, which gave me the ability to end things and try to find someone who was a better fit. I didn't have kids. I had no reason to marry anyone until I found someone who I wanted to be with, who made my life better. My mom, born in 1953, didn't have that ability. My grandma, born in 1921, most definitely did not have that kind of agency over her life. I'm glad I kept trying to find someone who added to my life instead of being forced to be with the first guy that came along. r/AskMen. Natashimo says, how do you know if a guy has a gambling problem? Telrim1 says, I grew up around gamblers and the number one sign is big swings in spending. They're either rolling in it or counting change. There is very little time in between. Follow the money. Tilpsychological 351 says, anyone who claims they have a system, unless they own a casino. The Shrouded says, he's at the casino every weekend, and maybe during the week. He never has any money despite having a decent to good job, but he also doesn't have a bunch of expensive stuff or a kid, and he doesn't seem to have a drug problem. Occasionally he'll suddenly have a bunch of money and want to celebrate, only to be broke again the following week. Funku 247,365 says, I bet he doesn't. Any takers? Complicated Business says, when it start interfering with other responsibilities. Does the gambling impact going to work, going to exercise, staying up till late, restrict savings, prevent the payment of bills, etc.? If there's anything a responsible adult handles that he cannot, and tied to that is gambling, then it's a problem. JSH 1138 says, tell him he has a gambling problem. If he says he doesn't, say wanna bet. Openware the 2627 says, anyone who sees gambling as anything more than something you spend money on has a problem in my book. Gambling at its core is hoping that you become a statistical anomaly and the likelihood goes down with each game played. Anna or Elsa says, something becomes a problem, disorder, when it has a negative impact on your life and/or the lives of people around you. It's one of those things when you think, do I/they have a gambling problem? The answer is probably yes, it's becoming one, or why else even have the thought? Dude says, if they are always asking to borrow money and are constantly out of money as soon as they receive their paycheck. I used to work with a guy who borrowed money from me multiple times because he was diabetic and needed to buy insulin. Eventually I confronted him and he admitted to gambling. He eventually got fired and I learned he was borrowing or asked to borrow money from everyone in the office. Matt Hooks Campbell says, he's pawning things he cares about. Fatherbeans 2024 says, usually in trouble with a spouse and they come to you with a fell on hard times story and need just a small loan of about $10k to $30k or more, they will pay back real quick. Fun fact, they won't spend a dime of the loan on debts anyways and go lose your loan as well, thinking they have to be due for their really big win. And even if they won, they'd spend that money on more gambling and not pay you back anyways. Giving money to any kind of addict is to say goodbye to that money and delay their downfall. Sooner Street 1 says, every time you ask what's up, he's at the casino lol. Emily Santano says, here are some signs that might indicate a guy has a gambling problem. 1. Frequent gambling. He often spends a significant amount of time gambling, either online, at casinos, or through other betting platforms. 2. Financial issues. He frequently mentions financial problems or struggles to pay bills, often due to losses from gambling. 3. Secretive behavior. He becomes secretive about his gambling activities or tries to hide his betting habits from friends and family. 4. Borrowing money. He regularly borrows money or takes out loans to fund his gambling, or he may even ask you or others for money to cover losses. 5. Neglecting responsibilities. He neglects responsibilities at work, home, or in personal relationships due to time spent gambling. 6. Emotional instability. He shows signs of stress, anxiety. That's all for this video. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe.